Hello, everyone, and good day to you. I hope that you're doing good. This is Roger, of course, the creator of Dungeon Crusade and the Avalon Adventure board game, and with Groovis Games Unlimited. And welcome to the next video in our series here. Today's video is going to go over how to set up Dungeon Crusade. And I think we're going to have a good time in this video, and you're going to learn a tremendous amount about the game, and also see setup is really not that bad. I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks and kind of a method, and we'll get through this, and I think we'll have a good time. So I want to welcome you. Of course, I hope you're doing good. Thank you for your time and your interest. New subscribers, welcome. Thank you for subscribing. It's very nice to have you here. We greatly appreciate it. And anyone else, think of clicking the subscribe button below. That way you'll be notified when new videos are going to be coming out. There's going to be a lot coming out actually this summer. So think about that. And of course, if you just stumbled on this video, welcome. I'm very happy that you're here, sincerely. Okay, I have all of my game content kind of like set aside over here, and all of the various tokens, counters, pieces, markers, just all the different components that we're going to need for setup. And aim it down there. So inside these plastic compartment trays, like you saw in the unboxing video, if you haven't seen this video yet, please do check it out, especially if you have just got the game. You can find a link for the unboxing video right in the description. And as I said in a prior video, you most certainly want some order or storage system in place for all this various content before we get into this. So I did want to stress that. And I wanted to open up kind of like the main game box, if you will, because we're going to be pulling a lot of tokens from here, like you saw in the unboxing video. So this is going to be your main game box that you're going to be setting up the game with. Up here, these are the quest tokens. You're definitely going to use those. And over here, these are the different, the 3 different variations of doors, and of course, the cardboard miniatures. So I just wanted to point out we're going to be pulling a lot from this box right here, the main box, if you will. Also, I would encourage you, if you have the game, to follow along and set up your game at the same time. Just pause the video between each of the steps. I think by doing this, it will get you quite acclimated to setting up the game and doing it very quickly. Also, we will mostly be following the quick reference guide for setup, but I would like to throw in some side notes for you that will help you out with just learning how to play, and some tips on making setup a little bit quicker for you. And lastly, yes, this is quite a girthy game. There's no doubt about it. But I think with what I'm going to show you and this method for setup, you'll see it's not too difficult at all to set up a game of Dungeon Crusade. Okay, let's get started. And just so you know, the table that I'm using here is 6 feet by about 3.5 feet. And I'm gonna do my method of setup just for the first few things here. So I didn't want to let you know that. You could of course just follow the quick reference guide as it's written, or you may want to use my method. And basically my method is I just put out the dungeon board and the village board and the dungeon UI board. We are going to be setting up scenario 1 into the depths. And remember, we were looking at this before. So what you're going to do is we're going to look right over here first for the dungeon, ancient runes. So what we're going to do is set up the ancient runes board right now. Okay, so we have our 6 tiles here that will form the ancient runes dungeon board. And remember, in the back of your quick reference guide, here is how to set up the ancient runes. Here's the Tomb of Kaladar. And then if you have the double dungeon expansion pack, there's also here how to set up Castle Blackwood and the Cavern of Lost Souls. So for your first few games, you may have to look at this, and then you'll pretty much know how these go together. They're quite easy. So let me set up the Ancient Runes right now. And the Ancient Runes is set up. Hopefully you're following along at home. And just so you know that each dungeon board in Dungeon Crusade measures 3 by 2 feet. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, again, kind of my way, but then we're going to go right into the quick reference guide and just go right down the list for you. We're going to just put basically the village board and dungeon UI board right over here. So let me get those and I'll be right back with you. Okay, we have our village board set up. And I'm just going to move you real quick. And there is our village board. And then right beneath it is our dungeon UI board. And again, this is just what I do. Maybe you want to flip-flop them around or move it around, but this is just, I don't know, how I always do it. I want to make a note too that maybe if you have limited table space, and other people have done this, you could take your dungeon UI board and your village board and have it on like a small side table, if you will. And these hold various cards and tokens, so that will free up some more room for you on your main table. Okay, so let's shoot back over here to the main dungeon and go to the next step. Okay, before we get into the next part of setup, I do want to take the time to give you a few of those side notes because I think they're pretty important and I think you'll enjoy learning about this. There is actually 2 phases of setup, okay? And what we're going to do right now is basic setup. Basic setup is you're going to do the exact same thing every game. There's nothing going to change from this. It doesn't matter if you're going to play scenario 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever. Basic setup is always going to be the same. So that's nice. You'll probably just, if you play the game enough, you're just going to remember what basic setup is, okay? And then the second phase is advanced setup. And what that is, that's when we're going to get into setting up the unique quests. It's called, there's a phase called seeding the dungeon, which is kind of like a dungeon generator, like a randomizer. So that's what advanced setup is, and it's very specific for each scenario. So hopefully I explained that well enough, but I think when you see it all set up, it'll all click. The last thing is, and I may have said this before, but I want to stress this to you, and I think it's something that you'll enjoy about Dungeon Crusade and the Avalon Adventure board game. You probably already know this about the Avalon Adventure board game, but with Dungeon Crusade, while this dungeon is static, everything, and I mean everything that goes into this dungeon is completely random from game to game. You'll never see the same game twice. Even if you play the same exact scenario, the same difficulty, etc., you'll always see a new game, so to speak. So just please know that everything, the monsters, the quest items, the treasure chest, heroes movement, the encounter deck, everything, secret rooms, it's all going to change for you. And I just love games like that. I don't really like crack 'em and rack 'em games, I like things with unlimited replayability. So in designing the Avalon Adventure board game and Dungeon Crusade, I really wanted to make sure that I accomplished that for fellow gamers and people, to give them a game like that. Okay, so now we're going to shoot back over here to the quick reference guide and just go right down the list here. And this is, of course, going to be basic setup. So when you get to those parts with setting up the dungeon board and the village board and the dungeon UI, just go ahead and skip past that. The first thing we're going to do is select our 6 heroes. And this is another side note for you. If you have played the Avalon Adventure board game prior to Dungeon Crusade, go ahead and place your heroes on the village board. Make sure that you give them the gold they discovered in Avalon and any loot they discovered in some of the treasure chests and any rejuvenation potions. You might want to put Albus here with them, the party's fetch hound. Now, if you're going directly into Dungeon Crusade, what you're going to need to do is select 6 heroes. Also, make sure to grab your Albus miniature and his level 1 hero card. When you select the 6 heroes, make sure to get their level 1 hero cards as well. And like I showed in a prior video, we'll use Maheliac here. You're going to take your card clips. Notice here, I put a white circle on the health bar and down here on the essence. That is their starting essence and health. Just slide those on just like that. I wanted to quickly touch on hero card placement. When I play, I place my hero cards right here at the bottom of the dungeon board, just going right across. I've seen some people put like 3 by 3 over to the right side. So just place your hero cards wherever it's comfortable for you or wherever you prefer. The next thing you're going to want to do is find the hero's starting weapons. And as you can see here, I had already pulled all their starting weapons. And let me show you how you can find out what their starting weapon is. We use Maheliac here, for example. Of course, here's their portrait. Right down here, it says their starting weapon, so Primordial Axe. And there's the Primordial Axe. And again, I just placed my starting weapons there, but you do what you prefer. We are now going to select 2 of the 3 special abilities that will be used for this game. Before we get to that, you're going to notice you're going to have these counterattack cards for each of the heroes. They start with these. So find the counterattack cards for each hero and put those over here in their player area. Like I had said, each hero has 3 special abilities that can be leveled up to level 3. But when you play Dungeon Crusade, you only use 2 of the 3 special abilities. The 2 are randomly decided. Let me show you how to do this. Okay, we're going to use Faith this time. So we can see that her 3 special abilities are Divine Healing, Blessing, and Holy Damage. And quite simply, you shuffle them and draw from the very bottom. Okay, Divine Healing will not be used in this game. So go through your deck, find each of the Divine Healing cards, and take them out and place them back in the game box. We will do the same thing for each of the other hero cards. Okay, you should have something like this if you did this at home. You should have 2 special abilities for each hero. What you're going to do now is gather up all these cards, put them in one deck, and we're going to take them over to the village board by the academy. And here we are at the academy in the village. Notice the stack of special ability cards. Also, as a side note, heroes must gain special abilities by their level. So a level 1 hero may only obtain a level 1 special ability. When they're level 2, they can gain the level 2 version of a special ability, but it must go in succession. Also, you gain new special abilities by using Enlightenment in the game. We'll get to that when we start playing Dungeon Crusade. Okay, I have to discuss with you this next section for the people who play the Avalon Adventure board game first and the people that go right into Dungeon Crusade. So let's start with going right into Dungeon Crusade. The next part of setup, if you're following along at home with the quick reference guide, is right here in the scenario book. The heroes get starting gold, and there's 3 kind of different difficulties I created for this. The game comes with a dedicated D3. So I placed my heroes here in the village board, so this is kind of like a little shopping phase. When they get their gold, they can buy stuff. And what you're going to do is you could either just select one of these, or you roll a die and let fate decide how much gold they start with. I'm going to recommend just go with this option. Each hero rolls 1d3, and you're going to time that result, like that's 200 by 100. So let's say Sir Brennus had rolled a 2. You're going to times that by 100. He starts with 200 gold. You're going to do that for each of the heroes, and then they can shop in the village before descending into the dungeon. Now, if you play the Avalon Adventure board game, you don't get starting gold. You must use the gold and loot you found in Avalon for your shopping phase. Okay, hopefully that's clear. While we're here, let's discuss this next in the quick reference guide. And this is kind of what my way, how I set up the dungeon first. But we're going to select a scenario from the scenario book. Okay, we already did that. We're playing scenario 1, Into the Depths. And then it instructs you here to set up the dungeon board. Again, we did that earlier because that's just my method to do that. But you could do this at that time. On 5 here, it says place the heroes on the siege tile within the dotted line. For me, if you want to be more thematic, I have my heroes here starting out in the village for their shopping phase. But what that is referring to is right over here. And we might as well just do this now. You're going to notice here's the siege tile right here. There's a white dotted line that goes around that. You're going to take your heroes and place them within that white box, like so. But again, you could just put them on the village board if you want to be more thematic with it, with their shopping phase, and then move them over here. Their fetch hound Albus can go adjacent to any of the heroes here. So we'll just put him here. The next thing in our quick reference guide is we're going to place the doors on the various chambers in the dungeon. And you'll notice with your game, you have 3 different variations of chamber doors. For example, we're over here in the Ancient Depths quadrant of the dungeon. And just as a side note, remember something. A quadrant is a 6x6 area of the dungeon. So this is the Ancient Runes quadrant. So basically you just do this. And of course you just take your black plastic bases and just plug those in like that. And so do that to all of the different chambers in the dungeon. So when you're finished, your dungeon should look something like this. We'll just do a quick flyover here. So each of the chambers in the dungeon should have one of the doors on it. Okay, and now the next thing here, this is not in the quick reference guide, but I do want to touch on this for you, and it's the key system in the game. You're going to notice that you're going to have some extra red bases, green bases, yellow bases, and blue bases. And what these are used for is the key system in the game. So when I designed the quest system, your heroes are going to have to find certain keys to open certain doors in the dungeon. And before you ask, no, Maheliak, your barbarian hero, can't bash a door down. So here we can see there's the Onyx key. That opens up doors with a red plastic base. The Jade key opens up chamber doors with a green plastic base. The Golden key opens up doors with the yellow base, and the Ivory key will open up chambers doors with a blue base. We're going to get to that when we get to advanced setup, but I did want to touch on this because I've had some people ask, why are there yellow bases in the game? It's for the key system that I created. And lastly, and this is just personal, one of my favorite arcade games from the 80s was Gauntlet. And that's, in a way, kind of what inspired me for this. So if you've ever played Gauntlet, I'm sure many of you have, and you heard that voice, save keys to open doors. I kind of always think of that when I discuss the key system. And this is something I think you'll really enjoy playing the game, is hunting for the certain keys to open up these doors. Okay, we're going to shoot back to the quick reference guide, but I did want to touch on this for you. The next part of basic setup is we're going to place the 10 treasure chest tokens on each of the 10 spaces in the dungeon with a treasure chest icon. And I want to shoot back over here to the quick reference guide and show you something. At the back of the quick reference guide, you're going to find a layout of each of the dungeon boards. I also did all the graphic design for the quick reference guide. So right here at the top, I put these like treasure chest icon, the mining sites, and where the trap symbols are. So what you could do is when you're laying down these various tokens, look for the dot associated with the icon. So the blue one here, that's for treasure chests, And then you can find all the treasure chests with a blue dot very easily. And then for the mining sites, there's yellow, and then the trap symbols are purple. So please refer to that for right now when you're putting down the treasure chest tokens, and it makes it much easier to locate everything for you. The next thing we're going to do in basic setup is set up the 8 mining sites. That symbol right there signifies that is a mining site. You're going to take the 8 mining site tokens and make sure that they're on the unexplored side. Shuffle them and then place them on the 8 mining zones in the dungeon. Also, a little more for you. 4 of these say not a mining site, while the other 4 say mining site A, B, C, and D. So each game you play, the mining sites are going to be random. You'll never know where the real mining sites are. Either the hero's fetch hound Albus has to scout out the mining sites, or a hero has to be adjacent or stand in one to reveal if it is a real mining site. So go ahead, if you're following along at home, place those now. The next step in basic setup is setting up the traps in the dungeon. We're going to go over this in depth a little bit here because I want to make sure you understand this. These are the trap symbols, and there's various ones all over the dungeon. For your first game, I would recommend not to play with traps, but I want to go over this with you so you know how to do this. So these are the trap symbols, but remember, for your first game, don't use those. Let's go back over here and let me show you how to set up traps if you're going to use them. So if you're going to be playing with traps in your dungeon, what you're going to do is find the 20 trap tokens and shuffle them. The Ancient Runes has 13 spaces that indicate where a trap should go. So after you shuffle these, without looking, you pull 13 trap tokens and place them on the space indicated. Before we move on, I want to explain something else about the trap system in Dungeon Crusade I think you'll enjoy learning about. You're going to find that 10 of these trap tokens have this kind of like triggered trap symbol, meaning a hero has to draw a trap card. They've sprung a trap. The other 10 tokens are kind of like this clear status, there's no trap there. So you can see by this system, every game you play, you're never going to know where a trap is at. So it's another thing that's adds to the replayability of Dungeon Crusade. And there are 17 unique traps in the game. The next step in basic setup is going to be picking one of the tavern task cards at random. So give them a quick shuffle and pick one at random, and of course you can look at it. These are optional quests, and they can be churned in at any time during the game, during Celebration Day. The rest of the 5 cards, you can put those back in the game box. We're not going to need those. Then take this and just put it over in your player area. The next step in basic setup is taking the power gem cards and just placing them somewhere by the village board. I usually put mine right up here. And as a side note, as you may know, there's mining and crafting in Dungeon Crusade. So as your heroes mine and bring the materials back to the blacksmith, remember, Albus can take those materials back, the precious stones and the materials needed to craft power gems. The blacksmith can craft these different power gems, and the heroes can plug them into various pieces of gear that give them bonuses and enhancements. So place those right there. The next step is we're going to shuffle up the Guardian monster cards. This is level 1, this is level 2. And the Guardians are like the bosses of the dungeon. Just think of them like that. So give level 1 a good shuffle. And I'm just going to place it way up here right now. And then of course level 2, give them a shuffle and just place those right next to level 1. The next thing you're going to do is find the level 3 and level 4 Guardian monster cards. Again, another side note, the Guardians of the game level up. All the monsters level up in the game. So you're going to do something kind of different here. and you're going to see why later in the game, why we're doing this. You're going to take your level 3 and level 4 and mix them together and give them a shuffle. Also, I'm going to show you later a game variant where you can do this with your Guardian cards for level 1 and level 2, and level 2 and level 3. We'll get to that, but for now, just go ahead and shuffle your level 3 and level 4 together, and I'm just going to place this up at the top with the other decks. Okay, so after our Guardian decks, you're going to divide up your level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 champion monster decks. And I'm going to place those on top there. A quick side note, these cards are in direct correlation with these monster tokens. You can even think of these as like champion monster tokens. So if your heroes encounter a level 1 champion monster token, you're going to draw from the level 1 deck. The same as the rest of these. There's the level 2 champion monster token, if you will. There's level 3. And finally, level 4. So always associate these tokens with the champion monster deck. Champion monsters lurk within the chambers of the dungeon. And finally, you're going to take your minion monster decks, level 1, level 2, and level 3, give them a shuffle, and put those up there with the other various monster decks. Also, as another side note, when your heroes are working on quest table 1, they are only going to encounter level 1 minions. When they're working on quest table 2, they will only encounter level 2 minions. And finally, when they are working on quest table 3, they will only encounter level 3 minions. So hopefully that makes sense if you watch the prior videos. Okay, for the next part of setup, we're going to be placing some various decks of cards on our dungeon UI board and up there on the village board. Okay, our first deck here is the blessing deck, and we're over here by the temple. Just go ahead and shuffle those and place those right here. And as a side note, heroes can purchase a blessing on Celebration Day and at the beginning of the game when they're in their shopping phase. The next deck is the Celebration Day gift cards, and those go on the Dungeon UI board right here. Okay, our next deck is going to be the Treasure Chest deck, and this also is located right here on the Dungeon UI board. So give those a shuffle and place those right here. Okay, the next deck of cards is the Secret Room deck and the Trap deck here. Now, since we aren't playing with traps, I'm going to put these back in the box, but if we were using traps, you can just put these cards kind of like right up here with your gem recipe cards. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is create the 4 mining decks. And remember when I showed you those tokens, there's mining site A, B, C, and D. That's what we're going to do now, is form those 4 mining sites. And again, this is another thing that's random every game. First, though, I want you to take out these 8 cards that say this mining site is exhausted. Hopefully that comes into focus. So take 8 of those cards out and just set those aside for right now. So what you're going to do is take that deck that you just saw and divide that deck into 32 for each of the smaller decks, okay? Once you do that, you're going to need those 8 exhausted mining site cards. What you're going to do is take 2, put it on each deck, just the last 2, and then give these all a good shuffle. And you're going to see why those cards are important in the game, and it adds to the replayability. Once you have those shuffled, I'm going to show you where to place those on the Dungeon UI board next. And here is the area on the Dungeon UI board where you're going to put your mining cards. I left that one open so you could see, but it's mining site A, B, C, and D. Next, we're going to form the encounter deck. I'm going to go a little in depth with this when we're done. First thing you're going to do is take your 86 encounter cards. What you're going to do is go through there and pull out the 10 cards that say interlude. Okay, so there's the 10 interlude cards. I'm just going to set those there for now. From your remaining cards over here, I'm not going to count them. I'm just going to pull approximately 30, but you're going to count out, shuffle this deck, and pull out 30 cards at random, without looking, of course. So shuffle, deal out, let's say that's 30, okay? You're going to take these interlude cards and take 9 of them, and you can give these a shuffle if you want. Take 9 of them, leave one aside, put that on top of the 30. Take this deck and shuffle all that together, so the interlude cards are going to be mixed in everywhere. And so another thing you can see, replayability. You'll never see the same encounter deck for the next game. It'll always change for you. And also know, don't think of this as bad. There's a lot of good things in the encounter deck. So there is some bad stuff, middle of the road stuff, good, bad. It's a good mix. Once you do that, you're going to take that 10th interlude card and place that on top. Set the rest of these cards aside for when you form another encounter deck at various points of the game. Okay, I want to go a little in depth with you about the encounter deck and give you some news on something I'm working on. So in the encounter deck, you can expect to find, of course, like you saw, interlude cards. And when you find an interlude card, this is just kind of like a breather for your heroes. Nothing's going to happen. Your heroes will discover different events. This is a good one where a hero could recover some health. So there's events. There's also environment changes. When one of these cards come into play, you set this aside and this stays in play until another environment card cancels it out, or something else in the encounter deck might cancel these out. Then finally, one of my favorite things are challenges. This is when you get to select a hero and there's going to be a challenge for them to possibly get gold, piece of loot, things like that. But what I wanted to mention is a lot of people enjoyed this encounter deck, and you may know that I'm working on a huge expansion for Dungeon Crusade. I would like to have about 100 new encounters in the expansion because I loved writing and crafting all of these. And there's going to be a new type of encounter in this deck, and something else that I'll keep a surprise about the whole encounter deck. So I did want to touch base with you on that and let you know. And let me show you where to place your encounter cards at. And you're going to take that encounter deck and place it right here on the Dungeon UI board. Okay, we're almost at the very end of basic setup. And you may remember this from the prior video. One of the final things you're going to do is take those Elder Globe tokens. Remember these? Red side signifies there's evil in the dungeon. Green means there's purity in the dungeon. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 tokens and place them underneath quest table level 1, and then one under level 2 quest table, and finally quest table number 3. Okay, and our final step for basic setup is we're going to place those various quest tokens here on the quest table. And if you watch the prior videos, then this will be very familiar to you. So I already did those, but what we're going to do is we're going to take our main quest token, place it here in quest table 3, the Kill the Guardians quest token, place it there, and then finally the side quest, and place it there. So just make sure you do that. If you're following along at home, just do that for all the quest tables, and basic setup is complete. Let's go and wrap this up. And here we are, guys, at the end of basic setup. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it got you much more acclimated to the game. Maybe some things kind of made sense now after seeing it set up. Couple things I want to go over with you. I have a secret video for you at the very end if you stick around. It's a very cool game variant that I wanted to share with you about the Guardians in the game. This comes along later, but it's something I do. These are the pickaxe cards that your heroes can purchase from the blacksmith for, of course, mining. And these are the various affliction cards. You know, heroes can get afflictions, various afflictions in the game. So feel free to put these up over there, kind of to the top of your village board where we set those other cards at. And you can just put these affliction cards just somewhere, wherever you would like, you know, by the side of the board. But I just wanted to touch on that real quick for you. Also, again, you know, of course, this was basic setup, and I had a few people assisting me, and we were talking about it. We were going to go right into advanced setup, and I think it would be better to let you guys watch this, you know, mentally digest basic setup, and then of course the next part will be advanced setup, and it's not going to be as long as this was. And this video was longer because I just, you know, I love you guys, and I just wanted to spend some extra time with you and point some things out to get you more acclimated to the game. Advanced setup is not going to be really that much. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, watch it, you know, go through setup a few times, and then in the next, probably tomorrow, we will have the advanced setup for you, and then of course playing Dungeon Crusade, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay guys, thank you again for your time. I love hanging out with you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So stick around, because at the end, for all you diehard Crusaders, I have an awesome game variant that you can try out. Okay guys, have an awesome day, and I will see you in advanced setup the next video. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.